Okay, so this caught my attention, courtesy of Twitter. And Lawrence Krauss, I think, actually was the one who was mentioning it. This comes from Nature Medicine. Time to have a chat, shall we? Okay, so this comes to us from Nature Medicine. Promoting diversity and inclusion in STEM starts at the top. So this comes from Marcia McNutt and Lara Castillo Page, and I forget who these folks are exactly. And I might look real quick just to see who they are, because I don't know. Well, that's unhelpful. National Academy of Sciences. Both from the National Academy of Sciences. Okay. National Academy of Sciences is a big organization that funds a huge amount of science from the federal government. It's one of the primary agencies. Well, they don't necessarily fund, but there's a lot of academics who are admitted to it. It is considered a high honor in the sciences when you are admitted and declared as a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences and all that good jazz. Promoting diversity and inclusion in STEM starts at the top. And STEM here is, I believe, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. STEM organizations must be proactive in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Notice there's nothing proactive there about advancing science. The COVID-19 pandemic offers stark evidence that without greater diversity, equity, and inclusion, science is prevented from fulfilling its fundamental obligations to society. In the United States, Black, African Americans, Hispanic... What the... All right, I am not going to pronounce all of that because you only need one. Hispanic Americans and American Indians are dying from COVID-19 at higher rates than those of other groups. What is the... Okay, so that's a Science article, 2021. In addition, populations underrepresented in science are less likely to trust any of the several vaccines against COVID-19 that are protecting hundreds of millions of people worldwide. Reference to JAMA Open Network. Okay. The COVID-19 pandemic has also negatively impacted the careers of white women and women of color in academic science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. STEM, as I said, fields is the disruptions from the pandemic disproportionately affected their engagement, experience, and retention. This is a National Academy of Sciences one. Whoops. Uh-oh. That's not what I meant to do, but... Oh, look at that. I can't get to it because it's behind the paywall. I'm likely to question that, to be honest. I'm likely to question that, to be honest. I would like to read it, but it is behind a paywall. The pandemic has thus underscored the urgency of efforts to advance DEI in science. Not really, but fine. A more diverse, inclusive scientific workforce and culture, together with a more inclusive approach to how research is conducted, would result in more attention on addressing poor health outcomes for racial and ethnic minority populations and other underserved communities. With more confidence within these communities that proven solutions are indeed in the best interests of all populations, and greater overall creativity, innovation, and excellence in research. The National Academy of Sciences has recognized its own obligation in this effort. The National Academy, the NAS, identifies and elevates the best science in the United States and the world by electing to membership the most impactful and creative scientists. In turn, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, NASM, calls on members from all three academies and other volunteer experts to serve on study committees that offer their best advice in addressing pressing scientific issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. For too many decades, however, the class of NAS members elected annually and the advisory committees on which they served consisted mostly of white men, although progress has been made in recent years, especially in the number of women being elected and serving on committees. So, I am a woman in sciences myself. I'm going to tell you right now, if you give me an award, put me on a committee, give me a fellowship or NAS membership or what have you, because I'm a woman and not because I am capable, I will tear it up and throw it right back in your face. Because that's an insult. That is a high and bigoted insult if you're going to do that to me. And I know a lot of other women scientists who feel the same way. That's an insult. We did not work as hard as we did. We did not work as hard as we did to be treated that way. It is not a compliment to be granted a position because you're a woman. It is not a compliment to be granted a position because of your race, period, or your sex or gender or anything like that. To me, it's an insult. Because that's not the way scientific enterprise is supposed to work. The NASA is committed to advancing diversity both in scientific enterprise at large and within its own ranks. To this end, in recent years, the Academy has made several reforms to the membership election process. The NASA Council, its senior leadership body, felt strongly that there should be no change to the criterion for election to the Academy, the excellence of scientific contributions. The Academy designed an intentional and proactive approach to DEI that did not compromise its standards, but instead focused on more broadly seeking out and nominating for membership extraordinary scientists who may have been missed in the past. Okay. I don't have a problem with that, actually. In theory, I don't have a problem with that. And the reason I don't have a problem with that is because you are seeking out and nominating for membership scientists who may have been missed in the past. And that is actually a very good thing. That through whatever thing, because the reason I say that is because it's gotten so interdisciplinary, and there's scientists in NGOs, there's scientists in federal agencies, there's scientists in state agencies, there's scientists at universities. They're all over the spectrum, really. And so, yeah, seeking out membership and nominating for membership scientists who may have been missed in the past, I don't have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with you necessarily saying, hey, let's go nominate for this group over here, from this group over here, and, go this and what have you. I don't have a problem with that in the slightest. That's not an issue. Where I have a problem with it is if that translates into quotas based upon the things that are irrelevant. It's like I said, if you offer me a position, nominate me for something because I am a woman and not because I am damn good, I am going to be pissed. I'm not going to be happy with that in the slightest, because that is high damned insult as far as I'm concerned. And I think many other scientists probably feel the same way, that that's a pretty damn big insult. And I'm glad that the NASA Council felt that there should be no change to the criterion for election to the Academy, that they're actually still focusing on the excellence of contributions, not on who contributed. Because again, universalism. That doesn't matter. Race, sex, gender, all the rest. Your contribution should be assessed equally and the same to anybody else. The organized skepticism part of it means that your claims, when they pass through scrutiny, are then accepted as provisionally true. And they have to go through a lot of scrutiny to be accepted. Your work has to be scrutinized a lot for its quality. So there's that, too. So hopefully none of that got compromised in the NASA. So that part I'm actually okay with. That's fine. But I don't know about that for sure, because there's very little detail here to say that the election criteria has not been compromised in other ways. The success of this approach is best illustrated in the steady progress in increasing the number of women who are elected to membership. This year, women make up almost half of the newly elected NASA members in the United States, most ever elected in a single year. Okay. The National Academy of Engineering and the National Academy of Medicine also report similar impressive gains achieved through the use of slightly different approaches. What are those slightly different approaches? What are those slightly different approaches? These changes are improving the content of work in the NASM field, while at the same time helping to advance more inclusivity within STEM fields. Leading female NAS members have used the convening power of the NASM to benefit all women in STEM. For instance, the NASM Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine issued a landmark report on sexual harassment in academia that makes the argument that sexual harassment has not been eliminated from academic settings, but has been merely driven underground. Its recommendations for changing the culture in academia to one of inclusivity are being implemented around the nation and beyond. A follow-up report in the underrepresentation of women in STEM disciplines emphasizes the double burden placed on women of color and identifies evidence-based policies and procedures to increase not only gender diversity, but also racial and ethnic diversity. Okay. I may go have to read that. What was that? That's number 8 in the reference list here. Hold on. I may have to go read that just to satisfy my curiosity if it's... Oh, it's also behind a paywall. Uh-huh. You don't help us contribute. NASM, this is just a message for you. You don't help the rest of us who are not made of money, who are also scientists, contribute when you stick these things behind paywalls. Because I would love to read it, I would love to critique it, I would love to point out things I think you got wrong and things I think you got right. But you stick it behind a paywall, and I am not interested in paying $55 for this when it is a report. And also, not to mention, aren't you a government agency? Aren't you supposed to be providing these things for free? Just a thought. Okay, where was I? 8. Here we go. Following its own advice, the NASA also adopted its first code of conduct and reversed its century-and-a-half-old policy of membership for life by changing its bylaws to allow for members to be removed for severe violations. I actually think that's okay. Severe violations of ethics, scientific ethics, and what have you. Yes, I think that's actually entirely okay. That should be the case. If it's a freedom of speech issue, however, like somebody on the council has a very different opinion from somebody else and somebody happens to be offended by it, no. And that would be my question regarding this code of conduct thing that they have. It's like, are you honoring academic freedom? Are you honoring freedom of speech with this? Or are you ignoring that with respect to the National Academies of Engineering and the National Academy of Medicine and hopefully National Academy of Sciences, similar thing? Because the thing about that is, if it's such a vague code of conduct, who determines what is a code of conduct violation? And is it somebody going to get thrown out because they, said something that somebody else didn't like? Because if that's all it is, I'm sorry, that's not an acceptable reason to throw somebody out of membership. Have a conversation with them? Yeah, sure. Throw them out of membership? No. That's actually violating freedom of speech, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm very much a free speech absolutist. You can say whatever the hell you want. Offends me, it's my problem. Offends somebody else, it's their problem too. Inciting violence is a different thing, however, do not do it. Let's see. Although the NAS still has a long way to go, it has also made progress in electing scientists of color. Until a few years ago, they were rarely elected to the NAS, but in 2021, 9 scientists of color were elected. In addition, more researchers of color are serving in leadership positions on the NAS Council and on councils of the 2 other academies. In 2019, the NASM established the Roundtable on Black Men and Black Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine. This roundtable's convening activities have addressed educational, financial barriers, the impact of racism and bias, the role of mentoring and building professional pathways to support Black men and women in STEM. And in 2021, a national summit was convened by the National Academies to address DEI and anti-racism in STEM settings. Let me guess, it's also going to be behind a paywall, right? Oh, look at that. No, it's not. Ooh. Oh, I got another video on this, by the way. The implicit bias stuff doesn't work. Doesn't work. I got another video to do on that, but I found some new stuff on the implicit bias tests that just don't work. Sorry. They're not scientifically very accurate, and they should be ignored. Anyway. Oh, hang on a second. Please join the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine as we convene a 2-day national summit addressing diversity, equity, inclusion in 21st century STEM organizations, discuss policies and practices for confronting systemic racism, identify ways to advance diversity, equity, inclusion in STEM, recognize the effects of systemic racism on the career of individuals belonging to racial and ethnic groups historically underrepresented in the STEM workforce. Oh, where was I? The National Academies also recognize that simply reviewing and revising the practices and policies aimed at advancing DEI is not enough to affect real change. To that end, this year, the NASM established its first Office of Diversity and Inclusion, charged with leading efforts to embed DEI with its projects, activities, processes, and policies. As leaders of one of the most preeminent scientific organizations, we have an obligation to enact change within the research community and within our own walls to ensure excellence, innovation, and DEI in science. We can no longer simply say we cannot find diverse talent or that the problem lies elsewhere. We must build our capacity here at the top of the scientific enterprise to lead DEI efforts and actively promote new approaches, practices, and policies that bring about real results. I said this before, they are correct that there are disparities with STEM. I think they are incorrect, and it is logically fallacious to assume that these disparities are the result of any kind of discrimination. That's a logical fallacy. That's a whole other problem. On the whole, I don't necessarily have a problem with this. I don't necessarily have a problem with, trying very actively to get more people of different backgrounds, racial all the way through, race, sex, gender, what have you, all the way through. So long as it doesn't come at the cost of compromising viewpoint diversity, because that is absolutely critical to the primary purpose of science, which is the pursuit of the truth. And you need those very different divergent perspectives. And that's, again, why I'm totally fine with getting more folks from very different backgrounds into science. Totally fine with that. Viewpoint diversity matters alongside of everything else, and that's exactly what I want to see. So I think, Ness, I will give you a bone. I'll throw you the bone here that I think this is a good start, and I am cautiously optimistic that you're going to do this, but also still respect viewpoint diversity and strive for excellence in science at the same time. I'm always hesitant when I hear DEI is involved in anything because I am concerned on what the critical theory approaches to such things are going to do to science. And I've seen some of it already, and it is scary to me to begin with. But that's a topic for another video. If you like this video, hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good jazz. Don't forget, you can join Miss over at shiasophia.locals.com as a supporter and chat behind the scenes on science issues. Like I said, some of the other things I said earlier, I may talk about with my locals community during the weekly Thursday Thought segment, which won't happen next week because it's Thanksgiving. But, yeah, come on over and join us. Until next time, I'm Adrian. I hope you stay curious, my friends.